And we're live. Yeah, well, welcome everyone. Today we have Naicri stay with us. He's a professor at the University of Montreal, and he has published several pieces. One of which his latest, I think, is the on the global sovereign ratings. And today, this is the topic we're going to talk about. So, welcome very much. Um, so let's start with a question that we asked to all of our guests here on the Bologna Book Club. What are the three main concepts of your book?
Is this question to me? Yeah.
Yes,
The
yes.
title of the book is Credit Rating Question of Methodology. What is about? Well, actually, the problem we have, as you know, uh, credit rating is very important for everyone. Why? And especially those who sovereign, I mean, uh, what we call it issues. These are governments who needs the money to finance their own development. So they don't have enough money to do it. And it is exactly the same thing what happened when a corporation use what we call financial leverage. That means use the debt to increase its capacity of wealth creation. So government in their side have the same problem. So they don't, no government has enough money to go, ahead of its development plan. In order to advance them, they have to borrow money. So borrowing is very interesting if you use it for the right thing. If you use borrowing for daily expenses, it will kill you at the long run. But if you use it for investing in infrastructure, hospitals, railways, and so on, you will increase your ability of generating revenue and, of course, improving the life of your people. So this is why government, all of them, recourse to what we call foreign investment or foreign indebtedness. So once this is said, well, we have a problem. We have to understand how it works. It's not because we want it that you get it that money at the international market. Someone is deciding for you, not directly, but indirectly, as we will see today. They are called, rating agency. You have to have the evaluation to get good deals at the international market, to get deal at all, because some of the country they cannot even recourse to those kind of facilities at the international market due to their classification by agencies. So the agencies are playing a big role. Socially speaking, they did a good job, because otherwise the alternative, everyone has to do the same evaluation. Could you imagine how many investors out there wasting their money just to evaluate? We have someone who do the job for them. For me, I said, well, this is a big responsibility. And, the things which force me or bring me to go to that research is because I was interested in transparency. So transparency, if you are a researcher, means replication. So someone, once you finish your work, everyone could be able, well, let's say be logical. It's not 100%, but it could be possible for him to do the job again, to use what you did and find out, end up to the same results. So when I looked at agencies, it struck a little bit my mind. The way they did it were very complicated. But complicated doesn't mean not good. Maybe they did a good job. What they want me is to know if someone is not happy about it, what are the recourses he has, because it's protect the guy out there, but it's protect also the agencies. It could defend itself against any attack. So this is why before going any further, because this is what I try, this is what the book is about. It doesn't mean at all that the work is not done well or bad. It doesn't go in that. It all says the way it is done that give us enough guarantee that is well done. This is the idea. Well, but to be honest, I would explain how I end up to make conclusion. First of all, for those who doesn't know how it works, because it's very complicated to understand really how it works. Well, I'll simplify it for you. What you do, you look to 33 variables. Then those three variables, you give them a certain value in a certain way. I will come back to it later. And you group them in 13, what we call sub-factors. And the 13 factors will be also reduced to 4 factors. Those 4 factors are, of course, economic strength, financial strength, fiscal strength, resiliency to risk. So the 33, variables, they all have to do with these 4 grouping, really. So I'm not challenging the choice of the variables. What they said, there is too much variables for no reason. Some of them are already correlated. So why, bother having them all the time, knowing that some of them should be correlated? Well, there must be some reason. The problem becomes very difficult when well, let's first, let's say before going to how it works really, let's have a look like I did 1 week ago and see how the international market use rating. You will see that Germany is having a rating of 3 A's. That means prime rate. And I compare it to someone which calls Mexico. Same day, of course. It has a B3A's 1. Now you have to know, of course, how it works. We will see it again. So when you look at the cost of debt for Germany, it's a negative. The yield for Germany today is minus 0.37%. What does it mean? If you have a bond or bill from Germany and you decide to cash it today, you will lose money. You do not recuperate whatever you pay. German government will gain. This is what you call negative yield. Now, when you look at Mexico, well, if you cash your bill, you will get 7.17% more. They'll be gaining, but Mexico has lost because he had to pay you 7.17 more than he cashed at the beginning of the issue. Well, if you look at it, this is 20 times different, really. How could you explain that kind of difference? Well, if you look at, agencies' way of evaluating things, what they do exactly like any teacher will use to grade its student. It comes from A plus, A minus, A minus, B plus, B minus, C plus, C minus, and so on. Well, the only problem, they don't respect it completely, that kind of reasoning. They allow themselves a lot of freedom in between. And if I do that in front of my student, they will kill me, I guess. They would. One of the things which struck my mind. Well, agency also did something else, which is very important. They have a bench, a threshold. Before it, you are investment. Under it, you have, speculation. So you have to be careful because, agency, they said, well, sometime, one notch is nothing. One notch difference. Well, it is a lot of thing for some people, for some countries, because it's the difference between called speculative or investment. It means a lot of money if you are speculative. Well, this is, how, which works really. So what I did was said, okay, everything is okay. Let's go. Let us follow someone who is in charge of evaluating or rating Germany and Mexico last week or some weeks ago. He will start with these 33 variables. Well, the problem, he will also Each one of them evaluate it in a range. He will give it a number of classification for each one, going for very high plus, very high minus, high plus, high minus, and so on till the end, which is called very low minus. Altogether 15, range really. Well, there is no problem about it, but they will go further. They said, okay, we cannot work really with ranges. We will work with numbers. So they translate those ranges in scores range. Another between, like for instance, very high, they will give it a range of 85 to 100. High, they will give it a range from 75 to 85. No, 80 to 85. Always 15 notches in between, except for the last one, very low, which goes from 1 to 20. Well, it makes me wonder why those differences, very high and very low, they have more spaces, really. Why? Well, because they, of course, obviously they should have their own reason. I'm not arguing that, but it does not, give some harmony to the system. For some reason, you have to use your judgment at very high and very low, and in between there is a mechanical thing which works. So I was challenging that kind of things. When once they have that, it's not finished yet. They said because they know they cannot work with very high, very low, high, and so on. They said we will translate all the things in midpoints. That means for the very high, which goes from 85 to 100, they will sum up and divide by 2. This gave them 92.5. So 92.5 is the midpoint for the very high. 82.5 is the midpoint for the high, and so on and so on. Again, in harmony is lost in between those two things, really, but they use the video. Well, once they have this midpoint, what they did to reach the sub-factors we're looking for, they will multiply them by the appropriate weights. How the weights are determined, we don't know. There's some justification, but there is a lot of liberty or freedom in choosing them. Well, we have 13 now, 13 sub-factors. The objective is to end up with factors. They will also group them in the same way, using a certain weight, and ending up in the 4 factors. Well, everything looks okay, is right. Well, the problem, they will translate again those factors to alphabetical, scale. So the 80.5 to something like that will have, again, very high plus, and so on. Wondering why they did that anyway. I didn't really go that far in the question. So for me, it looks a little bit very difficult to understand. Then the 4 factors will be translated in pre-combination. So the combination, if you combine, economic strength with financial strength, you will end up having a economic resiliency combination. If you combine that, I call it combination 1 with financial strength, you will end up with the second combination, government financial strength. And if you take the risk and take care of the risk of those things again, well, this is the 4 factor. That 4 factor could only affect the whole thing negatively, because it is elementary, which is understandable, but we don't know how that risk is calculated exactly. Then, of course, you end up having the grade. Again, we are coming back to not very high plus, and so we are coming back to AAA, 2As, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So you see this kind of movement give a chance to anyone to play game with them if he wants to. I'm not saying it happens. I'm not just saying it's possible. And of course, it makes you lose some confidence in the system. I want something which is clear, which someone can redo many times and end up exactly with a certain margin of error to the same results. Why? Well, some may argue, what the heck? There is one notch difference between what the agency find out and somebody else would find out. Well, why you bother really? Well, it does bother if you are in the threshold. I mean, difference between speculative and investment. At that level, it makes big difference, because it's difference because the hell of crisis, financial crisis. You are Greece a couple of years ago, Lebanon today, and so on. So it makes a big difference. You cannot, in this kind of result, base your reasoning on average. Average has no sense at this level. It is one issuer by issuer, one government by government. It is the way we should look at them, how performant, this rating are. Well, there is a lot of critics, of course, of credit agency. I'm not going to through them. What they want me to is to make sure my idea, how rational is this way of doing things. So what they did, well, I took all this. I'm coming to my study really. What they did, they took agencies really real data. I didn't change anything. Just copy and paste. Why? Because I wouldn't avoid any risk of having problems with the numbers. Because, as you know, if your numbers are wrong, well, your conclusion would be wrong also. So I want to avoid that kind of risk. Well, I took them and they said, well, the real problem with them is this changes in the ranges and the scales and so on. So I'm going to solve it. How am I going to solve it? Just by taking whatever they get and numbering them from 1 to 15. Well, my problem sometimes they use 18 classification, but it's okay. Said I'm going to exactly respect what they did. So the best I give it 1. The second I give it 2, 3, 4 to 15. And then it allows me, because one of the problem with agencies, methodology, you cannot sum up or add variables, results. Very high and very high minus. How could you find that there is no very high minus divide by 2? You see, it's difficult, to find out, to locate the real position of the variables. I said I'm going to avoid that altogether, just by taking the numbers. The best would be 1, the second best 2, and so on and so on. This allows me to find out middle points in the best way possible, and also to add, those variables together. It allows me also to use regression to evaluate the quality of the model used by agencies. So this is what they did. First step, I took, the result of agencies, and they translated. This is what they call translation. I gave them the appropriate number classification of mine, and they regressed. I said, well, I took the combination one and see how its component, given the weighting used, give a real idea of the combination. And I found that sometimes they didn't give that much. Well, their clauses are not very bad, but they're not exactly what they should do. The R squares are low. Not low, they are high, not as high as expected.
And sorry if I interrupt.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's bias in these results?
Yeah. I'm sorry? I didn't hear you here. I lost you completely.
Sorry, there was some mistake. What I was saying is, what do you think it's the bias thing, the result? What is it in the data mass final?
Well, they're very high. I mean, if you allow me to give the book, the results are very good. They are high, but I was expecting to be 100%, because this is the basic. They use their own calculation of economic strength, their own calculation of financial strength, and then of just the regression doesn't give you the real combination. So there is a discrepancy between the two. This is my. This is the first. I mean, uh, how you call it, calculation I did. The next will be something else. I said I'll do my own combination. I can strengthen them myself. In other words, I'm testing those weighting, how serious, well, I call it serious, how important they are, how efficient they are. So I took the numbers or the result of, let's say, economic resiliency with my numbers 1, 2, 3, 2, etc., and I combine them with institutional resiliency because the two will give me the one combination. So I reconstruct them myself. I said I'm not going to the value find out by agencies. I'm going the original numbers and applicate my weights, my own, well, the way they have, but I do it myself. I call that a restatement. Then I compare the result of the restated values to the result of translated values. And there was a big difference between the two. So because if you just use regression, the R square are almost 100%, each one of them, or 90, around 90. I can give you the numbers. We have them in the book already, but they are close, they are very high. And this is my argument. I said, okay, they could be very high, but do they treat individual issues, efficiently, fairly? Well, if you would like to know how it works, you have to go to the, how you call it, the constant. I said I'm going to use constant analysis and the residual analysis. After all, the model who has more residual, that means that he left some information aside. The one who has a bigger constant, that means, of course, that he didn't cover everything. To my surprise, agency's model has a higher constant and a higher residual. I said, okay, I'm going a little bit further to see what happened. I calculate the gap between the observation given by the restate model, which I consider best, and the result given by the agency's model translated in numbers. To my surprise, there was, out of 225 observation or comparison, 215 were out of range. That means agencies did not, there is a gap. It could be higher, it could be down. They are over, they may over, of course, evaluate an issue, but they might also under evaluate it. And this is a big problem with the rational behind, of course, this kind of doing thing. Well, this is my finding. As I said, if you compensate them, they may end up to zero, the average, because there are some which are over, some which are under. But in this specific case, in statistical analysis, the people, they tell them, what the heck? I mean, the average is okay. Because the regression itself is something which you draw in between. But yeah, my argument, yes, you're right. But the problem is now we are in a situation where a given error could be very, very heavy price for the issuer. Well, this is the whole what's all about of this study. Between me and you, I was invited by the Security Exchange Commission to present the book, because they read it, like you said, and they like to see how it works. So I presented to them, and my first question: am I wrong in my lecture of because, as you said, except for Moody's, which I congratulate, other agencies, they don't give enough information. Moody's does give you enough information to go through the system if you take enough time to understand it, of course. So my preoccupation at the beginning, because the book was just coming out, So to make sure I didn't make any mistake in my reading of the situation. And they like it. Well, I shouldn't say it. Okay. It's all right. So it was a good meeting anyway. Well, this is what I want to tell to you, and this is what they have to say about the book. Then, of course, I'm here to answer your question if you can.
Well, thank you very much. That was very, very interesting, and kind of summarized very well the Naicri book. Another question that our audience is that after the Great Financial Crisis, we had a lot of both the public and the newspapers went against rating agencies. And do you think? So my question is, do you think that the shortcomings became apparent after the Great Financial Crisis have been addressed by the rating agencies?
Yeah, well, you see, you know it a bit better than me. Agency, they are really revisiting their way of doing things. Really, there is a proposal on a table right now for reconsidering part of the problems. Really, so as I said before, there is the subject or the way to do it is very, very interesting. There is, I don't think, any quick alternative to credit agencies. So credit agencies, they have enough time to adjust. They show up. They are very clever in making themselves needed. So the fact that maybe some limits to the rating doesn't implicate there is no need for credit rating agency. The real problem with them is they are in monopoly situation. This is why legislator in 2017 or something like that, they took off those requirements or those references to agencies in their laws and so on. This is one of the things. But if you look at the real market, the three agencies, Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's, they control over 85% of the market. Maybe there is nothing wrong with that if they did a good job. I don't care me about the situation. They also cash over around 45% of net margin, which is very high. Well, these things, of course, can be corrected. There's no problem. These weaknesses could be addressed. And as long as agency, they said they are willing to address them. So should be some kind of consultation and see what's went wrong and what is good. The real problem, again, there is a demand for credit rating agencies out there. Some people, although they know there is some limits, they don't care because it's make them save a lot of money, and some of them they're gaining from those agencies, really. So there is a demand, and you cannot just overnight take it off. So we better accept situation and try to improve it. Socially speaking, this is the best attitude to do. But again, as I said, I'm not saying that those evaluations are not good. They are not. Well, I didn't have any clue to say that kind of things. I just said if I am the one who conceive these kind of things as a researcher, I would make sure they can be replicated. And they are not. That's it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Question would be, now with the new research, long-term trends have taken more of a central stage in modern macroeconomics talk. So we see people talking more about inequality, demographics, and so on. Do you think that these sort of long-term trends should have a more central role in sovereign ratings,
Well,
which currently they do not?
I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, all these models, the simpler is the better, to my mind, of course. But of course, if you could, well, those models, it depends on the information you have. They are built on they're based on information. So if the information is quality information, there is no reason that those models would not give you the right answer. But for me, you don't need that much, really. Let's face it, what we are looking for. the ability of the government to pay back or to face its obligation regarding the international debt. And there is two kinds of, obligation. One of them is the interest rate. The other one is the reimbursement of the principal. They are both on its ability to generate money. So you don't have to go that far, of course. You can just, because remember, agencies also, they don't risk going in the future. They don't want to anticipate anything. They'd like to base their things on things which are happening already, which protect them somehow. Because when you enter, the environment of anticipation, prediction, well, half of the people are right, the other half are wrong. And obviously, your rating will be half right, half right. So it's very difficult to push people to up there. The same problem you have in the accounting with the auditors and so on. We don't ask them to risk a judgment for the future. Although in the accounting, in the financial statement, there is something which you could use, and they never lie to you. The structure of expenses, the way they are, as you may know, in any corporation, like in any government, they are the fixed cost and the variable cost. And all the problems comes from the fixed cost. The higher your fixed cost, the more risky you are. So agencies, they can use those kind of things which exist already. Within the 33 observation they are using, they don't need that much, but some of them are very important, really. So they can really choose among them with some correlation analysis. They will find out those who are replications. So to simplify the things, really, I could see a lot of simplification in the system. So they don't need to complicate. They don't need to go to that kind of new models and so on. They look very good in the paper, but I don't think the result will be different. Maybe it will take off part of the judgment from those rating committees, which has a big power right now, possibly. But I don't trust them more than, a common sense within that committee. Yes.
All right. So as we're running a bit out of time, our last question would be if there is anything that she would actually change in the way that sovereign ratings are carried out today, what would that be? Or like was a general recommendation?
Well, general recommendation to look at the system again and to simplify it. Those number of scales used in the system, they just kill efficiency. You see, because remember, the first you switch from, you add values just like that, very high, very low. From the beginning, you could use numbers. And then we simplify the whole thing for you. You see, you use letters, then you change them to score range, then you change them to mid range, then you change them. At the end, you come back again to alphabetical number. So what the heck? Why all this complication? I understand that each stage there is some specific need, but it doesn't be that way really. Why don't you from the beginning give those factors, triple A2, and to work with those A's all the down. There is a place for simplification. In other words, if people they don't understand you what you did, well, it doesn't make sense for me. It could be very good, it could be, but it's difficult for no reason, unless, of course, because this is the new era of efficiency. Most corporations, what they do, they give you more than you need in information. What they want you to be confused. So this is the new kind of transparency we have on the market. If you are looking for that kind, well, this is success, believe me. But if you are really wanting to inform people, well, this is not the way to do it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for coming. And for all listeners today and in the future on YouTube, I highly suggest to read this book. and
and then hear him. Maybe what we can
yeah,
do, look
can
at
you hear
it.
us?
Well, now I hear you the last
Yeah,
word.
yeah,
Maybe what they can do, Luca, if you can take their questions, they could answer them by mail.
yeah, definitely, definitely. I can send them. I can send them to you.
Yeah, and I react on them.
Okay.